Welcome. Good evening, and welcome to the Laramie City Council work session, Tuesday, April 14, 2026. And we will begin this work session with any public comment on non-agenda items. And I think Sarah Gorin, you signed up to speak. Good evening, Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Sarah Gorin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Sarah Gorin, representing Albany County Clean Water Advocates, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to present to you a brochure that we've recently completed. You are all familiar, of course, with the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan, but maybe you didn't delve into all the appendices and everything. And Appendix G is called something like Best Practices for Homeowners. And while people who are interested may have looked at that, we thought it would be useful to directly convey that information to people who live in the Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone. And so we applied and got a small grant that was fostered by the Wyoming Community Foundation, and raised some additional funds to print this brochure that I'll give you copies of, and we're in the next month or so going to be mailing these to everybody who lives in the Aquifer Protection area. People in the city boundary of the APOZ will receive this brochure, and people outside the city limits will receive this brochure, and also a piece on maintaining your well and your septic system. And so it's turned out to be a big deal. There's like 600 residents in the aquifer protection area, so it's not a little thing. But we appreciate the city's support of aquifer protection, and just wanted you to be aware of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the city clerk will take those and distribute them.
Just give them all to me. Oh, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Reverend Palmer.
At your service? No,
Good evening, Sally.
no, and I keep meaning to go by your house and say, St. Matthew's prays for you every Sunday for 4 months. Why it's just for you and not the rest, I don't know.
I think some of us know.
So I will be brief, and I'm in support of whatever Sarah works for, because I'm a member of the Aqua. But Brad, Jim, Micah, Sharon, Aaron, Emily, Joe, you hang in there with us, you know. And it's like, water is life. That's all I want to say. Except that I brought a thank you, and I know I shouldn't pass out papers, but it's thank you for the flowers. Because when I see the daffodils, I think, you know, it's not just the whole scheme of things, which we need, and clean water. Because my dad lived in Chicago with really bad water for years. But you are guardians of the life of water. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sally.
I'll keep praying for you as an Episcopalian. I don't know. Anyway. And the flowers say thanks.
Thank you, Sally. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to our first work session. Aquifer Well Monitoring Network Final Report, and Ben Levin.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Mayor and City Council, thanks for having me tonight. Topic of the evening is our world-class aquifer that we have. Just as a reminder on backstory, in 2023, we jointly with the county adopted the updated Casper Aquifer Protection Plan. One of the major recommendations in that plan was to implement a well network monitoring program. So back in 2024, it went out for proposal, and Tri-Hydro was awarded this program to really to design a monitoring program for the aquifer. Like I said, this is a world-class aquifer that we have, produces abundant water for us. The quality is as good as anywhere. The real purpose of that is to continue the protection of it and to track water quality and water level data. Historically, there's been some smaller monitoring programs in place, but they were more specific to specific contaminant sources, not what we're doing here. This is more aquifer-wide with many monitoring wells to track those water levels and water quality. So it's a couple years in the making, and we're excited for it going forward. The hope is to take this final report from Tri-Hydro and then send it out to consultants to propose on implementing the program later this year and probably kick off the program, we're hoping, in 2027.
When?
In 2027. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ryan Athey with Tri-Hydro.
Thank you. Good evening, Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ryan Athey with Tri-Hydro Corporation. I'm senior geologist, the project manager for Tri-Hydro. As Ben alluded to, we all know the Casper Aquifer is utterly is the utmost importance to the health of our community. Residents of the county and the city rely in some cases solely on it for their water, and for the city residents, over 50% of the water comes from the Casper Aquifer for their domestic needs. As Ben mentioned, there's been some kind of piecemeal studies and data gathering efforts across the aquifer, but we're looking as part of the recommendations from the most recent aquifer protection plan. We're looking at kind of a wholesale monitoring plan across the entire aquifer protection area. So the objectives of that monitoring plan would be to establish baseline water level and water quality data. We know that water levels, despite what's happening outside right now, we know water levels are a bit of a concern with this recent lack of precipitation for the past few months. Oh, thank you. And also across water quality, is always a concern. We've identified in the past several potential and existing contaminant sources. So we'll look at those here in a second. And then with the data gathering effort, we'll also be able to compare to those baseline data and monitor trends and changes within that quality and water level. Kind of an ancillary benefit of some of the monitoring well would be to identify wells that could be sentinel or wells that are upgrading of our production wells, so that if there was something detected in those wells, we'd be able to shut down production wells before they became a problem within the drinking water supply. So we can dive into that here in a little bit. And then kind of a third benefit of the program would be that we just gain a better understanding of the aquifer as a whole, potentially how water moves through. It's a complicated, fractured system, so this monitoring water levels and water quality, we want to better understand how things move and where our real critical areas might be. So this first, just so we're all kind of talking on the same, from the same book here, we'll go through some of the terms and geology of the Casper Aquifer. This is a cross-section kind of looking north, basically right through the middle of the Casper Aquifer protection area. West is on the left, east is on the right, so kind of like Pilot Hill would be on the far right. And then you can see where it says the hospital water tanks to kind of orient you where we're at. The city springs there, kind of in the middle, would be like right up by Snowy Range Academy. So sort of in that area, just to orient you. So the Casper Aquifer is made up of 5 members. Starting from the bottom to the top is the alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon members. These are generally made up of sets of sandstones and limestones, with the exception of the epsilon. It's just kind of a sandstone all by itself. But these are interconnected, but also kind of act independently at times. So they've just been identified based on their lithology for the most part, but as a whole, they act as one big aquifer on a regional scale, but locally they can be kind of isolated depending on what's going on there. So overlaying the Casper is the Satanka shale. That's the big red member on our cross section. This is a tighter, a more water doesn't flow through this formation quite as much through the shale in most cases, where it's not fractured or something else. Generally in the upper portions, it's not as fractured. So but in the lower portion, it can be kind of fractured and may act kind of in connection with the uppermost parts of the Casper Formation in some places. Where there's sufficient thickness of the Satanka, it does provide some protection from infiltration to the Casper. And then you'll notice that the Casper, basically above the city springs, is pretty much an outcrop. So you'll see it's at the surface. In some places, it's covered by a thin layer of sediments that are, maybe 10 to 15 feet thick in some places, but for the most part, there are places where you can see Casper Aquifer exposed right at the surface. Like up by Imperial Heights Park is one place where it's readily exposed and easy to see.
Councilor O'Doherty?
The sediments that you just described, is that the grainy, when the test that was going, anyway, is it like the sandy kind of?
Very
grain?
sandy, yeah.
It's not organic.
Right there, yeah, there's very little organic material in any of that. Yeah, you might be referring to when they were doing the septic tests? Yes. Is that, okay. Yeah.
And Councilor Shumway?
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard a couple of things. One thing, you said that the Casper Aquifer is one big aquifer, but you also said if there's contamination, we shut down zones. I know you talked about Satanka on all these different levels, epsilon, alpha, beta, things like that. Do they eventually communicate, or would shutting down a zone prevent contamination in one zone to eventually migrate to a different, to the entire Casper Aquifer?
If given enough time, it could eventually get everywhere. I mean, it is one regional aquifer, and it's connected through a series, and that's kind of the next slide, is it's through a series, like through the faults that we see mapped on, if I push, there it goes. So looking at this slide, you'll see a number of black lines on there kind of running east and west. So this is looking in map view again. And you can see a series of lines. Those are all faults for the most part that represent mostly vertical fracturing. And so some of these fractures can protrude through multiple layers. So then those layers would be in connection at that location. But sometimes on a local scale where there's not as much fracturing, the layers could be isolated from each other. But so depending on where a contaminant enters the recharge zone, oops, there we go. Does this have a pointer? If I push
The pointer doesn't work.
The pointer doesn't work?
The TV, it doesn't show.
That's okay. If you look up in the yellow zone, where it says recharge zone, you can see how some of the different members intersect the ground surface there. So depending on where a contaminant were to enter, that's most likely the member that it would be in. Not to say that it couldn't migrate to other members. As I said, there is some connection between the layers, depending on how much they're fractured and if they're intersected by different faults.
Vice Mayor?
Sorry, thank you. So just for clarification, because the vertical fractures, when I'm imagining this, they sort of act as barriers between each of these layers, or no?
No, they actually kind of act
They
as
open it up.
conduits, yes.
Okay, thank you.
In most cases.
Oh,
There are
because the
some
fractures are going this way and then the layers are this way. Makes
Correct,
sense. Sorry, thank you.
No. Does that answer your question, Mr. Shumway?
Thank you.
So yeah, as I mentioned, faults, folds, which are often associated with the faults, that's basically just the bending of the rock. Believe it or not, does act a little bit plastic and can be folded without actually fracturing, but most of the time there's some fracturing associated with the folds. And then there's also bedding plane fractures, which actually they're parallel to those bedding planes that we showed on that previous slide. Those create fractures within the aquifer. And so in most cases, the fracturing, it's a benefit and can be kind of a disadvantage in that the benefit of the fracturing is that it creates secondary enhanced permeability so that the water can move through the rock much easier. So like that's why all of our production wells that are associated with the city, or that the city has, are associated with some sort of fracture or fold. You'll notice like up at the spur anticline, there's a couple, we have multiple production wells up there. That's at the very north end. That's a large fold and fracture system that creates enhanced permeability up there. And then the Turner well, we've got a large fault system that emanates right there. And so that's why the springs were originally there, and then we developed them as our production wells. So it's good in that sense, but it can also, as mentioned, it can also be a pathway for contaminant infiltration. So that's why we're looking at having monitoring wells that could serve as sentinel wells upstream of the production wells, because that's basically where, it give us a chance to see it before it gets into the wells. So, so as I've alluded to, we've got potential and existing contaminant sources that have been identified within the most recent Casper Aquifer update or protection plan update. So on this slide, you'll see all the little purple dots. Those are septic systems within the aquifer protection overlay. So the green is the zone 3 of the aquifer protection, and the yellow is the zone 2 of the aquifer protection area. And then zone 1 is the small area right around the production wells. It's only a 100-foot radius, so it doesn't really show up on this, but just to orient you what the different colors are there. And then, so the purple dots are septic systems, and then the green dots are other potential contaminant sources. So the septic systems actually represent existing contaminant sources. Since there's been some studies, some well sampling studies that have shown that we do see nitrates, which are likely sourced from the septic systems. Concentrations of those nitrates in some of the wells in excess of the 10 milligrams per liter MCL, which is the EPA maximum contaminant concentration. So that would represent an existing contaminant source, and then these others are potentials. Places where contaminant chemicals are used or stored and have the potential to be released to the aquifer. So those are identified things like fueling stations, I-80 and the Union Pacific Railroad. They're transporting chemicals and other things across there all the time. And then things like urban runoff are another potential contaminant source. Parking lots and things of that nature are where contaminants can accumulate and then be washed into the subsurface. So those are all of our contaminant sources that we've identified. And then, oops, went the wrong way. So we'll go back to this one again, and we've covered this a little bit, but it's probably worth reiterating. So depending on where those contaminant sources lie can determine where they may end up in the aquifer. So on this one, we show that the Sherman Hills subdivision, for instance, kind of lies across the entire recharge, or a lot of the recharge zone. So it potentially could get into the Epsilon and the Delta members, whereas on this example, the Imperial Heights subdivision is kind of only across that Epsilon member, and so you would only expect to really see contaminants from that in that Epsilon. And so if you were putting in a monitoring well, for example, like on this one, we show the Turner number 2 well, which is production well, but if that was a monitoring well and it was sited down in the bottom of the gamma, you probably wouldn't see any of the contaminants from that Epsilon member if it was only screened in that lower gamma. So that's an important factor as we were going through this project to make sure that the wells were suitable for what we were looking to monitor. So in terms of project, we looked at a number of different wells. Within the update of the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan, there was some recommendations on wells that could be used. There's 10 wells that the city has currently monitored in the past, not necessarily on a regimented schedule, and not necessarily all at the same times, but we do have data from those wells. So we looked at those 10 wells and show. So this map here is the northern half of the aquifer protection zone, and so there's 7 wells on that map that were part of that original 10 monitoring wells. The spur number 6, which was associated with the spur production wells. And then there's a couple of older production wells that have been converted to monitoring wells. There's a monitoring well at the LCCC, and then 3 monitoring wells that were drilled as part of another study that Wyoming Groundwater and Bern Hinckley completed near the Imperial Heights Park. So those were evaluated to be included in the project. And then the 3 in the southern portion, there's the EQ number 1 is a monitoring well that's within the right of way of I-80, kind of just east of the Grand Avenue exit. There's a Soldier MW5 well, which is right next to the Soldier production well. And then there's a monitoring well out at the Soldier Springs at the far south end of the aquifer protection area. So we'll get into all of those were, with the exception of the 41 T3 wells, were recommended for being included in the monitoring well network. So in addition to these 10 that we looked at, there were some recommended other wells that were existing and that could be potentially used as monitoring wells. So again, this is that northern half. So we looked at a couple other monitoring wells associated with the Spur well field. These would be more in the neighborhood of that subdivision that's up there on the Spur. Might be a little further away and better candidates for giving us some distance from the production wells so that we would see something in there a little better and have a little more time to react, I guess. The Peter number 2 well is a rehabbed stock well that the Wyoming Game and Fish rehabbed. That would be an easy candidate to sample. It's easily accessible, so we included that as a background well. It's not necessarily in the area of any sources, but it would provide background data on just the overall aquifer for something to compare to. Other wells in the southern half, the Huntoon number 1 and number 2 wells are in the neighborhood, or in the Sherman Hills and Imperial Heights areas. Those were existing domestic wells that were converted to monitoring wells, or at least are no longer in use and could be converted to monitoring wells easily. The MCMW well is down near the quarries, the Mountain Cement quarries, as well as the Waitkus well and the King number 1 well. Those are all in that area. And then again, there's another well, the number 2 dummy well was another rehab or refurbished stock well that could be looked at as part of the monitoring program. In addition to the wells that we evaluate that are existing, we looked at where we have data gaps, where we have gaps in the program that, contaminant sources that maybe don't have a well in the right place, or maybe they're not in the right member of the aquifer. So we proposed some wells to be drilled that could be added to the program in the future. The Turner MW6 well is a well that would be down gradient of the Tumbleweed Express gas station as a monitoring well specifically for that source. The TCMW2 well could potentially be a sentinel well for the Pope well field. It's a little up gradient of that area and would also be in the area of high concentration of faulting, so it could give us some of that background information on kind of flow characteristics of the aquifer. And then the I-80 monitoring well would be further up the canyon. That was a recommendation of another study when we looked at the potential vulnerabilities of if there was a release within Telephone Canyon on I-80. So that would be another well that could potentially be completed in the future. So our recommended proposed well field kind of looks like this. We've got a couple wells up by the spur, that Peter number 2 well, and the 41, actually the 41 T3 should be removed. I missed that one. Apologize. That one will come off in the final report. So those would be in the northern half. There's not as many contaminant potential or existing contaminant sources in that northern half, so not as much monitoring up there. So a lot of it would be concentrated kind of from the Turner wells south, where we've got, Imperial Heights, Sherman Hills, we've got I-80 coming through there, we've got the railroad, plenty of septic systems to monitor. So most of the wells that I mentioned would be included on the final monitoring well network. This table shows a summary of the final proposed well network and kind of what their contaminant sources that they would be specifically targeting, the member that they are completed in, and then their sampling frequency and their priority. So kind of looking over at the priority, there's kind of a standard priority, and then the lower priority wells that could be added or would be sampled at a lesser frequency. And So what we've proposed in terms of sampling frequency is our first 2 years would be a higher frequency such that we could gather that baseline data. We'd do mostly quarterly data for the source area wells. And that quarterly data gives us, we can see trends in if there's seasonality, if there's, things showing up in the winter that don't show up in the summer, things like that would give us an idea. We get 2 full years of data from that. Some of those background wells, we could sample semi-annually just as a little bit of a cost savings. They're not quite as critical as the source area wells. And then after that first 2 years, we would basically cut the frequency in half so that those source area wells would then be sampled semi-annually, and the other wells could be sampled just annually or as needed if we determine that they're not as critical. And it's recommended that after that first round, the first 2 years of data is collected, that we would review that data and see if anything needed to be changed, if maybe a well doesn't show any hits, detections of any critical contaminants, and could be lessened on the frequency, those kinds of things, or maybe we need to increase the frequency for certain wells. So certainly kind of a living document in that regard, that we would want to make sure that that's not just a static kind of thing. So this table shows our analyte list. So those, the upper analytes would be our core list of analytes that the source area wells and the background wells would all be sampled for. Those major cations, anions, those are the calciums and magnesiums and things like that. Metals, both dissolved and total metals. TDS, total dissolved solids, so that gives you an idea of kind of the overall saltiness of the water, for lack of a better term. And obviously we would do nitrates, since that's a large concern with the septics. And then just some other kind of parameters, that pH and electrical conductivity, dissolved oxygen, that are useful when evaluating just the overall health of the aquifer. So those would be analyzed in each well during each event. And then some of the others that we would look at just on a per well kind of basis would be things like TPH, which is total petroleum hydrocarbons. So in the areas where we think that those are potential contaminants, maybe downstream of the fuel station or I-80 or the UP railroad, things like that, those wells that target those kind of contaminants, we would analyze those on an annual basis. They're a little bit more expensive to analyze for, so doing that across the entire aquifer doesn't make sense when you don't have those contaminants really present or potential to be in certain areas. So, and then pesticides and herbicides are kind of in that same boat as well. Those, can be applied in the residential areas, and so we would analyze for those on an annual basis again, and if just in certain wells, downgrading of those areas, and if we were to get detections of those, we could resample or up the frequency of sampling for those constituents. So that brings us to our final costs. So estimated cost for the first 2 years on an annual basis is about $85,000 to do all 15 of those wells. 13 wells would be our source area wells, and those would be the quarterly, done 4 times per year. And then we would do a semi-annual event, which includes those wells plus the low priority wells, which is another 5 wells, and then another annual event that includes those 3 extra constituents, the petroleum products and the herbicides and pesticides. So that's why the breakdown of those 3 different categories there. And then after 2 years of sampling, you can see the cost would drop to about $44,000 once we knock down the sampling frequency. So, and yeah, that's basically the same number of wells. That does not include any of the wells that are not yet drilled. So, if those were to come online, then the cost would obviously go up a little bit. So with that, I would entertain any more questions.
Thank you. Councilors, questions and/or comments? Councilor O'Doherty.
The actual taking the water from the well, is that an inexpensive process? I was thinking when I taught aquatic ecology, we would test for all those things, and it would be a cool for a class to do some of the in-betweens, unless the extracting the water part requires a lot of energy.
So what we've proposed to do for sampling is they're called hydrosleeves, and so they're like a membrane sleeve that you put down the well, and it can be in there anywhere from like 3 days to I think 6 months is the kind of the limit, but they sit in there and kind of just equilibrate to the contaminants that are coming in, and then you pull that up. It's down there on a string. You pull that up, and then you fill up the bottles that are required for collecting the samples. So they're a one-time use, but they're also but they're very labor cost effective that way.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed in the report that it suggested that we invest in a data management system. Is that something that, what would be do you know the cost of that?
So that would be dependent on kind of what those can be a range of costs for sure. So it would be somewhere that it would house all the data, and then you could pull it up. You could pull up maps, you could pull up tables that would show trends of what the data looks like potentially. You can have all kinds of data. You can have water quality data. You can have your water level data in there. On order of magnitude, it's probably a $10,000 to $20,000 a year type of expense. Just knowing we have a proprietary data management system that we operate, but there are others out there, and so ours operates on depending on how many wells, how many data points you have in your system. It's on a kind of a sliding scale, and then kind of what the number of subscriptions or number of users you need for it can kind of change those costs, but.
Follow up
to that. Thank you for that. And then one other thing, when I was reading through that, I'm wondering if that might be an opportunity. I don't know if UW has anything in their programming that you could utilize students to kind of help manage that data set, and if they have any programs there, I have no idea. But I know that the university is hoping to do more outreach in communities, and I'm wondering if this would be a potential opportunity for that.
I'm not aware of anything from UW, but that doesn't not mean that there's not something out there. That's definitely something that the city could look into.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Just super interesting stuff, and I think I'm really happy to see the presentation because I think we need to do something like this. I have a couple questions, Mayor, so maybe I'll just ask one or two, and if you can come back to me, that's fine too. I guess, I know we talked about the water level. Would this really help us understand our baseline water levels and the recharge capacity, and get a better understanding of that framework?
Yeah, for sure. That would be one of the overlying goals of the program is to have that, kind of aquifer-wide network, so that you could see, where water levels are highest and lowest, and if there's trends in certain wells, based on maybe a fault system that runs through there and is concentrating flow in an area or something along those lines. We do, we have a pretty good understanding that a lot of the recharge to the aquifer comes from those fractured areas, folded zones, so, for sure.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll keep it brief with my second question. I just noticed that Turner number 2 well, and I don't have the aquifer protection plan in front of me to understand how deep that goes, but do we have any wells that do or would ever go into the alpha member? Could we ever pull water from there? I see that only goes to that gamma member, it looks like.
Right. I don't remember if any of our production wells go to the alpha. I believe some of the ones to the south may go as deep as the beta member, as it tends to be a little shallower. A lot of places like the gamma member is at the surface in those southern areas, so I don't think any of them are open, but thanks.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Freed, did you have anything else?
Well, I do, Mayor, but I think they're about cost of wells and other things that aren't super relevant, so I think I can hold off.
All right. Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to public comment.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, we won't. We'll go back to Ben. Thank you for your report.
Mayor, Councilor, just I guess forewarning, we do have budget requests coming up. We did include this in our operating budget going forward, so to fund this program. And as far as drilling new wells, we've had capital projects in our budget for years. I think that was proposed, I don't even know when, years ago when these programs were first discussed, and along with the IE monitoring program too. So really my goal for this program as it relates to the water quality is when I retire in 20 years to look back and say, wow, all that sampling we did for water quality was kind of a waste of money because it didn't change, and that's a good thing. It would tell us that we've taken care of our aquifer. We haven't had any major contaminations, anything like that. We've done our job with the protection plan. So while I do think this is a really necessary program, even just tracking the water levels. I don't know if you guys noticed, it's fairly dry this year. That's going to be a continued issue for us in Laramie. And on a year where we may see our surface water dry up, we're going to rely heavily on the aquifer this year. So having a program in place like this to track water levels and quality, I think is only going to get more and more important through the years. So.
Agree. Councilor O'Doherty?
So the Sentinel wells, I think we'll always want those. And, but for the sake of the public, like if a Sentinel well gives us some bad news, do we just go, ah? Like the plan would be, like you would stop drawing from that well and then maybe pump it to another. Anyway, if you could just give a very brief summary of how that is handled so that it's not just we get bad news and now we all go thirsty.
Yeah, I think the idea is that we would shut down that particular production well, and then could draw from another well, in the system that until it could be could be cleaned up in that area, or some sort of remediation or some sort of treatment or something from that if we were to use that well.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I'll just add, the city has a lot of wells that, even some that we don't use on normal water years. So the city has a lot of flexibility, a lot of water. It'd be a better question for Mr. J. Smith, but yeah.
Thank you again.
All right. Now we'll go to public comment on this agenda item. Sarah Gorin.
I just turned it off. Okay, Sarah Gorin again for Albany County Clean Water Advocates. There are several of us here tonight, and we want to just thank the city so much for making this investment because it's really important and it's something that we think will be very valuable for the population of Albany County going into the future. Most residents of Albany County live in the city of Laramie, and the municipal system serves not only the city proper but also the south of Laramie water and sewer district. So one question we had was where the process goes from here. The report is labeled a draft, and we wondered, is it going to be made available to the public for comment for some period of time? It's a big investment. We think it could benefit from the opportunity for wider distribution. There are some errors that could be fixed. For example, this mentioned that Imperial Heights and Sherman Hill subdivisions are sources of contamination from septic. Imperial Heights is on city water and sewer. It's not a source of septic contamination. And in terms of thinking about sort of monitor wells generally and what you were mentioning, Councilor Doherty, is sentinel wells. I'm going to simplify hugely here, but you can kind of think of the aquifer, that diagram that Mr. Aestley was showing with the cross-section, is kind of a big bucket. And the rain and snow in a normal year falls on the front of the Laramie Range and it soaks down through. So it even though there's this line here that says, schematic water line where it kind of pops out there at City Spring, this area is all full of water there. And then you can see then the diagram of the city well going down into it. So it kind of goes down in and then pops back up at those weak places, which are the springs that go along the front. And so the reason it's important to think about that is any of the city's well fields draws from quite a wide area. It's not like it just pulls from the aquifer that's immediately in some direction from it. So when thinking about tumbleweed or a source of contamination like tumbleweed and the Turner well field, a lot of thought needs to go into what is the likely flow pattern between that source of contamination and the well field. And so it might not be straight down Bluebird Lane. It might be kind of wanders off towards the north, and what you want is to know when it's going to hit your well field, and the closer it is to the source of contamination, the better that is, because you're going to catch it the soonest. And so we were a little concerned about how it seemed like that. I mean, definitely there should be a priority on intercepting any contamination that might come from there, but the placement of that well is pretty important. And similarly, construction of monitor wells is important. I think the city staff and all have worked together to do a pretty remarkable job of using what we have, but the best monitor well is a purpose-built monitor well, so that it's in the location where it's most likely to catch the contamination and in stratigraphically where it's most likely to get it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Am I done?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other public comment on this agenda item?
Mayor, could we have that first question addressed by the city staff as to what next steps might be in terms of public feedback?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, as this is a work session, Ben and I will meet and discuss how we put it out for public comment and how we bring it back to council for final adoption.
Thank you. Councilors, any final comments? I just appreciate the work that's been done on this. We're looking at just a very valuable resource for our community. As has been said, it provides 50+% of our water, and during drought, it could be much more. And so I think steps to monitor are part of our maintenance and the care of this resource. So thank you. I appreciate the work, and I appreciate Aqua and the work you all do to advocate for our clean water. And I appreciate your request for the reports so that we can get your feedback, and that's very important. Thank you. Next, we'll go to our second work session, which is the 2026 construction season update. Director Brooks Webb. Oh, Eric.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Make sure. Sounds good. All right. Good evening, Council. Tonight I'll be presenting the city's planned construction projects for the summer. And the map we have up here is our public-facing construction map. This is available on the engineering website. If you look on the left side, it's the first one you'll see over there. And anyone can go and view and use this map, and it's a map that we kind of try to keep updated as the construction season goes on. So this map currently shows what's planned for this summer. Just a few exceptions that I'll point out as we go. So when you first open this map, it will pull up to a general overview of all the capital projects that we have going on this year. If you click this button over here, you can actually then zoom in and kind of scroll around in the map. Also, if you want to just look directly at a project, you can go up to the top here and click on that, and that will zoom you directly to the project and give you that project information. Or, as we'll kind of do tonight, you can just kind of scroll down on the web page and it will just go project by project. Most of the projects you're going to see here tonight are managed by engineering, but there are a few that are being managed by Parks and Rec or Solid Waste, and then we do support those from our office as well. And then in total, we have 26 projects currently planned for this summer, and that doesn't include any other projects that are still in design or the planning phase. And these projects take the work of our entire office, from project management to inspections to addressing issues in the field. Our staff works together to keep all these moving forward. And we also understand sometimes it can be very unclear on who to contact for questions or concerns. And for that reason, we usually try to encourage the public or city staff to use our main engineering either email or our main line. That email is engineering@cityoflaramie.org. Or you can reach out on our main line at 721-5250. And this is especially important this summer. Staff are often in the field or in meetings, so we have staff available at that main office who can work best to get that question directed to the correct person, and that's also the best way to get that answer quickly too, so it can get directed correctly. So tonight, as I mentioned, I'll give a brief overview of each project. As we kind of go through, probably easiest if you have a question on a project, you can just stop me and we can discuss those projects as we're kind of going on rather than trying to back up at the end. And I'll do my best to answer them. I also have my two senior engineers, Mark Hazlett and William Winkler. If we get too deep, they can kind of help dig me out a little bit. And we also have Brooks Webb, the director, to help as well if we need it. So with that, we'll kind of begin going through the list. So as you see, as you kind of scroll down, it's going to go from that general overview of the map to the specific areas, and we have the items highlighted of the areas. So this first one we have here is 15th Street Recon, Phase 2. This project will be fully reconstruction of 15th Street from the south side of Ivinson to Grand Avenue. And this also will include the right-hand turn lane. This work will be removing the existing roadway, installing new base. We do have this project planned for a concrete driving surface, and then we'll be replacing curb and gutter where needed. This project has currently been bid, and we expect it to start shortly after UW graduation and completing early this fall.
Councilor Vigil, a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a quick question. It's my understanding Whitehall will still be occupied in the fall, and so will this construction work impact like move-in for the new freshmen who come in the fall?
In the fall. Mayor, through you, so the hope is to actually probably have the project plan before move-in. We are in discussions with the University of Wyoming for both this project and another one you'll see is Ivinson. Some of those schedules are a little bit to be determined, but we are working with their staff very closely as we work through this. All right. The next project that we have is the 41T3 well piping and treatment. So this project will design and construct a well house at 45th Street. This will connect to the existing city well that's out here to our water distribution system. It'll include new piping and connections that will connect to the east side transmission line to improve water capacity and flow for existing customers and future development. As part of this project, we are going to have to remove the median you see in this project area. That's to allow construction of that well house and access in there. We're finalizing design on this project currently and hope to have it finished this late fall. Okay. Moving on for our next project will be 4th Street reconstruction, Grand to Ivinson. This project will fully reconstruct 4th Street from Grand to Ivinson Avenue. The existing roadway will be removed and replaced with new base. We also have this project planned for a concrete driving surface. We'll also do curb and gutter, sidewalk, and ADA improvements where needed. Bidding will be coming in the following months for this project, and we plan to award it in July and finish it late fall.
Councilor O'Doherty.
So when this street and curb and gutter are done, is there any way to get rid of the puddle that forms right at the corner of 4th and Ivinson that freezes in the winter, like right there? Will there be any storm drainage to alleviate that issue?
Mayor, through you. So we don't have storm drainage directly planned for this project, but we will try to improve the grading as we go around those areas the best we can.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I am assuming this is planned in a way that only part of the road will be closed at a time due to the fire station? Think about how they back out and they cross the full.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, we're currently working also with fire to figure out how that coordination will work and not impact the fire station the best we can.
Great, thanks.
All right. So this next project, this is a pretty big project that we have going on, as many of you are aware. This is the 2026 street rehab, and it's improving several heavily used streets across the community through road resurfacing and replacement of selected curb gutter, sidewalk, and ADA ramps. This project focuses on streets that carry a lot of traffic and that need improvement, while also just kind of doing that mill and overlay, so not a full reconstruction in these areas. This will create a safer, smoother, and longer lasting streets for the public. As we go through this, I'll actually get the mouse over here. It's a little bit slow on here. We'll zoom in here and we'll kind of go project by project to kind of give you a better overview of what's going on. So the first one we have is the General Breeze roadway. This will be from Snowy Range Road to the airport, and we have been in coordination with the airport as we have been working on this project. Next one, sorry, this mouse is a little difficult. Next one will be Colorado Avenue. This will be from Venture Drive to almost Riverside. We then over here will be Adams Street, and this will be from Snowy Range Road to just past Commerce Drive.
Oh, sorry. Busy looking at the map. Councilor Newman.
That one scares me. Will that be a total shutdown, or will that be like a one lane? Because I can see the emails coming now of 1,000 cars going to Colorado now when school lets out.
Are you talking Adams?
Yeah, Adams here.
We will have to probably, it will be impacted with the roadway. I don't think we have an exact determination of how that's going to be closed, do you know?
Mayor, through you, we are working with the contractor currently to get a finalized traffic control plan for the mill and overlay portion of the job. There's areas where we will be able to allow traffic in one direction at least, but with the operation, the width of the roads, there's going to be times where we do utilize Colorado Avenue to detour. And yes, I understand there's a lot of flow that will come from Wildtech. It'll actually probably work better if they go through the signal at Colorado. I do know that a lot of flow goes through Adams Street currently, and they take a right at Adams Street, and that's a heavily used movement. But with the proximity to the interstate, that really gets kind of congested heavily there. So moving them over to Colorado, while it still will be backed up on Colorado, it will probably operate a little bit better than Adams. So we're going to accommodate as best we can to keep traffic flowing through the project, but in areas we will have to shut down. It'll be short periods of time. We're talking a week of paving in this area. Yep.
Councillor O'Doherty.
Will the crew be working with Wyotech to maybe make the timing, I don't know, do you ever have a week off or something like that?
Yeah, Mayor, through you, we're still working a little bit with the exact schedules on that. If there was a week off, we could talk with the contractor if we could get that information and talk with them and see if that's a possibility.
Send it to you tomorrow.
That sounds good. All right. Next street we have is McHugh. This will be from Curtis Street to south of Baker Street. And then we are also continuing, we had talked about 4th Street earlier. We'll be continuing on with 4th Street where we're ending at Ivinson, and that will be continuing up to Flint Street. And then we'll also be doing Ivinson from 3rd to 6th Street where we had ended the project last year with that Ivinson reconstruction. Next, we'll be moving over to Skyline Drive. This will be from the north corner all the way to 15th Street. We'll then be doing Reynolds Street from, this is 9th to 15th Street. We also will be doing, Sheridan. And this will be from 15th to 22nd Street. We will have 22nd Street from Grand to Spring Creek. And then right over here, we'll be doing Spring Creek from 22nd to 26th Street. This project has already started. If you come in by the City Hall tonight, you've seen we've been doing quite a bit of concrete work. That's been kind of going on all over town. We've been doing demo, installing new concrete. All these roads will get, as I mentioned, all new ADA ramps as well as part of that work. And then in the next week or two, we'll be starting actually on the street work. And so we'll be starting to tear up the streets, and this has a planned completion later this fall. As we are also doing this project, we are looking to do improvements in striping. So we are looking at all the streets and trying to improve striping as we're able to.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. You guys do a pretty good job of sending out those city flashes that say when streets are going to be closed, that sort of thing. Do you have, or will there be a schedule of kind of overlap of when these are happening that we can share out? So, you know, if they're all happening at the same time, we can just let people know, like, get ready. Or if there's a way to say this one's happening now, you know, just to prep people mentally for all of it.
Mayor, through you. So we've been advertising that on our social media and newsflash platforms, and that's probably the best way to get that information. We just released some today. They probably won't all be going on at the exact same time, but they will be very closely on top of each other with that.
Follow up?
I guess the other thing would be, if people are seeing this tonight and say, we're seeing all of these happen, when will the 4th Street Flint to Ivinson project take place? If you guys have a schedule of that we could refer to kind of in real time before the City Flash stuff goes out, I think that would be really helpful on our end.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, Director Japp, the longer we sit here, the more questions I come up with. I guess my only question, is there a different requirement from the city to provide notice? Like if we're shutting down a whole road or utilities are going to be impacted, I imagine there's like door hangers and things. For some of these projects where one lane will still be open and traffic could continue, that's where you're saying utilize the news flash or social media. In any of these projects, where the full road might be closed, is there a different notice that goes out to people affected in that area?
Yeah, Mayor, through you. So the contractor is notifying the neighborhood as they're going in and their door knocking and notifying the residents prior to the work actually taking place of these areas. Because of normally if we were doing a project, we would be notifying the area, sending out a lot more mailers and stuff. Because of the large scope of this project, it was difficult to get out that same type of notification. So the decision was made to go more of the other route that we have been moving forward with.
Thank you.
Councilor Doherty.
Maybe before we leave this session, it would be nice to demonstrate how people can sign up to get that news flash specifically about the roads, because that's really helpful, and people complain about not being able to, they don't get the paper anymore because it doesn't come out often enough or this or that, but the city can send email if you sign up for the newsflash, and I think it would be really helpful for us to see the process of how you do it. So thanks.
We'll continue on to our next project here. It's an airport tank coating project. This project will clean and recoat the airport tank to maintain and protect this facility. This project will be completed over the summer. Next one is the Corthell sewer connection. Most of this project actually occurred last year. We installed a new sanitary sewer line along Corthell Road from Whitman to Spring Creek Drive to connect to the future Bill Nye sewer line that connected to our existing B2 sewer line. This was about 2,800 feet of new sewer line with manholes and service connections. The remaining work for this project is to do asphalt surface restoration. There is some damage and stuff to the surface on Corthell, so they'll be coming in this summer to kind of get that cleaned up. So that's why we have this still as an active project on here. Next one is our Bill Nye and 3rd Street traffic signal. This project will design and construct a traffic signal at the intersection of 3rd and Bill Nye Avenue. We're doing final design review right now and have this planned to bid in the coming months, with construction starting after that. Next one's priority sewer rehab, and this is on Custer Street. We'll be replacing and upsizing an existing sewer line with 2 manholes in Custer. So we begin at 13th and extending a half a block west. We plan to bid this project soon with award in July and finishing up later in the summer. Next one is our landfill front entrance evaluation design. This will be to evaluate and design improvements to reduce traffic backups and improve traffic flow at the landfill entrance. This one is currently under design with planned construction this summer. So this is one that's been kind of in the works for some time. This is our Ivinson Avenue from 9th to 15th. Work for this also includes some of our side streets between Ivinson and Grand Avenue, as well as some adjacent alleys. This project will include water, sewer, and storm sewer infrastructure improvements, along with concrete and AD upgrades where needed. This project was recently bid, and we hope to take the contract to council here soon, with construction starting this summer, and it is expected this project may extend into next season as well, so it'll be a 2-year project. And then this project, I do want to note, will finish our sewer outfall improvements coming down this area. We've been working on that, as council's aware, for the last several years, kind of working our way upstream, and this will be that final on that project. So as I said, this one's kind of been a long time coming, but is a big project, and we are coordinating with University of Wyoming as we kind of move forward. We don't have a finalized schedule since we don't have the contractor on the books yet, but as soon as we have that, we'll have more discussions with them on that to discuss buses and impacts to their system as well. We did partner with the university on this, I should note, to do some improvements on some of their areas where they connect in to this area that they worked with us as to. Next one is our municipal operations water fill station. This project will design and construct a new water fill station at the Municipal Operations Center. We plan on bidding this kind of early next year, but I wanted to, we put it on the website now just to kind of get the word out that the city's fill station will be moving from 4th Street out to the MOC out at this location. Next one is our north side outfall line. This project will install a new sanitary sewer main from the intersection of 30th and Asphalt Lane to the existing main lift station located off PFE Road. We have this project mostly designed, but it's been delayed as we've been working through easements with the landowners in this area. And once those easements are finalized, we'll finalize the design and get it ready for bid. Our north side tank and transmission line is the next one. This included the construction of a new water storage tank and all the associated pipeline improvements for the northern portion of the community. This project is mostly constructed, but we also use this map to help with some of our closeout paperwork to get that notification. So that's why that project is still on here, and we have another one coming up later. Next is our optimized drainage ponds. This project includes maximizing the storage capacity on some of our existing regional ponds located along 22nd Street. We do this by modifying the outlet structures of these ponds as well as some minor grading, and this will increase the storage capacity and also allows for the installation of some water quality enhancements as part of that work. The Nighthawk pond has been constructed, and we plan to start the other ponds, the one at Reynolds Street and then Scout Park later this summer. We have PRV replacement at Pierce Street. This project will remove and replace the existing pressure-reducing valve on Pierce Street. Work will include constructing a new building, installing new valve components, and roadway repairs where needed. We hope to bid this project soon with construction this summer. We're just kind of finalizing DEQ approval at this point in time. Another big project that we have coming up is the Snowy Range water line replacement. This project will replace the aging water line in Snowy Range Road between Adams Street and Schrader Avenue in preparation for YDOT's planned road reconstruction project. The existing 6-inch cast iron pipe will be replaced with a new PVC pipe to improve reliability and supports future service needs. This project was designed in-house, and we're finalizing design with plans to bid in the next couple months. And this project also will likely go over 2 years as we construct it. Thornburg Alleys is the next one. This project replaces aging sewer lines, manholes, and water mains in the alleys adjacent to Thornburg and in the 2 alleys extending north to Sheridan. These alleys will also be resurfaced as part of the project. This project is currently under construction and plans to be completed this fall. There was some questions that came up from council last week on this project regarding the fences and removal. The contractor did confirm that they did provide notification to residents on the fence removal. The contractor is also going door to door to talk to residents in person as the fence removal is being completed. Temporary construction fencing is being installed immediately following the fence removal, and And if they have an issue, like on a case-by-case basis, they're installing a temporary chain link fence. So like say if someone does have a dog, they're just kind of working with those individuals on a case-by-case basis, trying to work with. Otherwise, you're probably getting like that orange kind of snow fence as a temporary fence being installed. But they are working with the homeowners with that. They anticipate getting the fence removal done here in the near future, and then a permanent fence reinstallation is tentatively scheduled for in September once the actual project is complete. So hopefully that answers all your questions.
Thank you for your
on that.
research on that question that we had. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Next project, this is a pretty big project as well, as our West Laramie main lift station. This will design and construct a new West Laramie main lift station to replace the existing aging facility. The new lift station will improve reliability and provide additional capacity to support future development. This project is technically under construction, but getting material has delayed the project, so you're not going to see any actual work going on that site right now. Next, we have our skunk pump and mixer. This project will replace the skunk pumps in the RAS building and install new mixers in the skunk basins. These improvements will help improve operations, increase staff efficiency, and reduce maintenance needs. Another big project we have is the Zone 1 tank. This project will design and construct a replacement for the existing 8 million gallon tank at City Springs. The new tank will help support future north-south transmission improvements and provide greater flexibility for timing and phasing of future projects and developments. This is a critical project for the city, and we are looking at some creative options for design and trying to fit it in there with that existing tank. This project is currently under design with a plan to bid and start construction this fall. These next couple, we don't have exact details on them yet, but the first one is our chip seal. This is something that we do every year for ongoing roadway maintenance, and this helps extend our streets and that lead to further deterioration, that leads to more extensive and costly repairs. This will be done on multiple roadways throughout Laramie, and we're working on those exact roadways as we move forward, and we'll post that as it becomes more, we get that more dialed in. Same with our cured in place lining project. We work with our utility and street division to install cured in place lining along our sanitary and storm sewer lines, and these will be identified at a later time. We have our dowel headgate structure. This project removed and replaced the existing concrete structure at the Dallin headgate. This is also shared with the inlet of the Bath Ranch. And this project is mostly complete, and it's currently out here for helping with that closeout paperwork. So as we kind of go on, we'll talk a little bit about some of the parks projects going on, some of their bigger ones that they're running that we're assisting with. The first one is the Labonte Park pathway and fitness station improvements. So this includes replacement of the existing pathway and improved fitness stations. They'll be putting in a new pathway, some curb and gutter repairs around the park, some irrigation and sod repairs all around Labonte Park. This is under construction. I believe will be completed this year.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I work near here, and so I go around that path. And near the skate park, there's kind of a flat portion that comes out as is that going to be like a picnic area? It's like a rectangular spot. What's happening there on that
City
spot?
Manager answer that.
Perfect.
Honorable Mayor through to Councilor Richardson, or Vice Mayor Richardson. Are you talking about the area right behind the ball fields?
Yeah. Yes, so between the skate park and the pond, so it's west of the skate park, east of the pond. There's like a square, we can talk about it later. I just thought if you knew offhand.
You're talking right by the old ice hut, is what I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yeah.
So that's actually just access for storage to the ice hut.
Oh, okay.
So that will be, what used to be there was the stairs down to the old ice skating area, and those had become unusable and had a rail, so those were removed, but we still needed access to the storage for the warming hut. But there is, that's what that reach is for what you see right there.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, I even have a better one. You're talking about the trapezoidal area right on the side, and that's where the new fitness stations are going to land. And so all the fitness stations are going to land. They're ADA accessible on the concrete trail, and they will be accessible in that area. So
Very good.
Next project is our Spring Creek Trail Phase 2. This project will extend the trail from where we ended last year at La Park all the way down to 9th Street on the north side of Spring Creek. This project just kicked off with an expected construction this year. So this is a real exciting project and a big extension of our trail system. Also, we have the West Laramie and West Side Shared Use Path. This will construct a shared use path from Pierce to Snowy Range, as shown here. This project is also getting underway with planned construction this year. So this is also an exciting project to help that connectivity. And then the final we have a non-city managed project. One that we wanted to post here is YDOT will be doing Grand Avenue. And this will be from 30th Street out to the Grand Avenue interchange. So they have that planned this summer to go in and do that work. So that is the projects that we have planned for this year. So it'll be a busy construction season. We'll have a lot of activity going on, a lot of detours, a lot of impacts to the public, but hopefully we get a much improved public infrastructure from that. So if anyone has any other questions, I can answer them at this time.
Councilors, any further questions or comments? Vice Mayor.
Right, just one comment. This is such a nice interface, and like being able to look through this, I so appreciate it. And I love that you have where it's at, the contact number, who is in charge of it, so anyone can come and look and figure out like who to contact if they have questions. This is kind of going back to my first thing. We talk about when the scheduled completion date is. If there's any possibility of adding scheduled start date, that would be awesome to this page.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Japp. Yeah, also just want to shout out to the community that if they're using this app and you click on the actual road segment, it details where the funding comes from, proposed. It does have some proposed start dates, but they're generally in a year. But a lot of information that I feel like we get questions about that you've put on this platform. And so, yeah, I think we'll just keep trying to do our part to steer people this way, especially if this is updated very often. So, thanks.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Japp. That was quite comprehensive. I just want to note that there's a lot of projects over in West Laramie, and I just really appreciate that. I think West Laramie needs some love, and I see that reflected. And so, yeah, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Freed.
I thought of another one. I just wanted to say that at least for the Parks and Rec stuff, Director Bork this past last Wednesday at our Parks, Trees and Rec Board did a presentation that you can go find on the city's YouTube. If you want more detailed explanations, he did a pretty good job explaining the capital projects managed by the Parks, Trees and Rec Department.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilor.
Mayor, before I turn over to Director Brooks, one thing I know that was asked was how to sign up for the form. I believe that's right on the bottom of our city website. If you just go to the main city website and scroll down, you'll see that directly at that location.
So you would just do cityoflaramie.org.
Mm-hmm.
And when that page comes up, scroll down toward the bottom, and that's where you can sign up.
Yeah, I think our city clerk will help me out here.
So that's the main page.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple different, Mayor, there's a couple different ways to find it.
Okay.
If they go to How Do I, sorry, our little block keeps getting in the way here. If you click on Receive Email Notifications, it brings you right to Notify Me. So that's one way to do it. If you're in Chambers, you can scan this little sheet that looks like a rainbow. It's got a QR code on the top, or you can add your name, and Owen will contact individuals to see what they want to be signed up for, because there are different options in there. And the one at the bottom, I know it's been a little... Yeah, we're gonna have to check with IT and see if we can figure out why it's doing that, but those, I would use those two that we just talked about. You can also type in the search engine, notify me, and it'll give you a link to it as well. But it's easiest if you go to how do I and receive email notifications.
Receive email. Very good. Thank you, City Clerk. I appreciate your going through that. Director Webb.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, good evening. I wasn't planning on talking tonight, but I couldn't be here and not say anything. So here I am. First of all, I just want to thank our engineering group. They've obviously worked their tails off to get these projects out on the street this summer for the community. And I think the map looks fantastic. I think it's timely. I wanted to tell you that some of these projects, optimized drainage ponds, the 4th Street reconstruction, Grand Ivinson, all the optimized drainage pond projects, 15th Street recon phase 2 and Ivinson project all have 2018 special purpose excise tax money that is paying for at least portions of those projects. So I think that's important for our community to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the city engineer to that map if we can add on their funding source for each project. I think that would be good for the community to see. So with that, we appreciate your time tonight. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you, Director. All right. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Peggy McCracken.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to make some comment. I'm Peggy McCracken, and my comments are concerning the street rehab and the possibility of striping to widen and make improvements to the bike lane as part of the project. So I'm going to read this because 3 minutes is not enough time. So I come to you today as an avid cyclist who has experience navigating Laramie streets and bike lanes on a bicycle that requires a wider footprint than the average bicycle. I'm a volunteer cyclist for the Laramie Tri-Shop program, but I'm not representing that program tonight nor speaking for it. I'm simply speaking as someone who has experience riding on a wide bicycle. So there are many other examples of wide bicycles like adult tricycles, recumbent bicycles, bicycles pulling trailers, and any cyclist who has difficulty maintaining a straight trajectory. For example, children, right? All that wobbling and weaving. I have grandchildren, I know. So I gave you a handout that I'm highlighting just a couple of examples in just a couple of areas where navigating the bike lanes can be challenging, because most of our bike lanes are not dedicated bike lanes. They are instead multi-purpose areas where bikes can get out of the traffic lane, but they also serve as areas for parking, bin pickup, loading, turning, and sloped street drainage. So there's a lot of stuff going on in a sometimes too narrow bike lane next to a sometimes too busy street. So I'm going to highlight 2 areas that are on the street rehab list and that I frequent with a wide bike. The first one, my highest priority, is on Sheridan Street between 15th and 22nd. This street is in really bad shape, so I'm glad it's on that list. But look, it's a busy street, and there are a lot of cars parked on the bike lane. And I get it, because people live there and you got to park your car somewhere. But when you are in that bike lane and there are wide vehicles parked in the bike lane, it necessitates you have to, as a cyclist, you have to move over into the lane of traffic, right? And sometimes that works out and sometimes that doesn't. And I can go into more of that, but you see the pictures that I handed out and you can see I'm on the tri-side and I'm getting like shoved into the traffic lane. Okay, so that's Sheridan Street. The next is 22nd Street. The problem area, most of it's pretty good, but on that block between Grand and Garfield, so you have bike lanes leading up to there, and then at that block, the bike lane just disappears. It just goes away. So you have a really narrow street, you have no bike lane, you got all kinds of traffic, you got people turning all kinds of directions, And I'm telling you from experience, and this is unfortunate, the safest place to be is to take the whole lane as a cyclist. There's really no other safe way to navigate that area, so that one needs some attention. Now, I really wish I had enough time to go through that whole rehab list, but I didn't. But I'm just going to say there are lots of other areas where striping could enhance the bike lane and could even widen the bike lane. I especially hope that this happens on the extension of Ivinson between 5th, 6th, and 3rd, and also on 4th Street.
Thank you, Peggy.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And Peggy, I really appreciate you're taking the time to put together a handout so that we can look at that and then refer back to it as we talk with staff and stuff. Good job.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, Nancy Sandelar.
Mayor and council. I'm looking at all these wonderful improvements we're getting around town. A lot of work's gone into this. This is going to be really great. I asked the clerk to have some pictures, if she can pull them up.
That we've emailed it to them.
Oh, you emailed it to them? Fine, that's great.
They're in the agenda, aren't they?
Yes. Thank you. The ones I was going to talk about 22nd Street, but it's already been done. So I'm going to look at, the worst of it is Skyline. Those are not bike lanes, those are let me take off your mirror with my face lanes. What I would like to see happen, yeah, there you go, is that we don't need that continuous left turn lane. There's nobody on that road, and there's no place to left turn into except the veterinary and the police department. And make it so that the cement plant loop is once again a loop that we can ride on our bikes. But I would like to see council get this as close as possible. The best I can do looking at the guidelines, I have to use Google's AI program to get it to work, is 10 to 11 feet is in the guidelines is for a collector under 30 miles an hour, and that would leave at 5 feet in some places to add more bike lanes and make this standard. We're going to have a mill and overlay all over the place, and we're going to have chip sealing. And those are good excuses. There's no more paint, so now we got to do paint. And it doesn't cost a penny more to put the paint the proper distance from the center line than it does to put it in the door zone. So, yeah, got that. Yeah, I'm hoping this infrastructure will go as good as possible, and I'm glad that we're doing all this good stuff and all the work that's going into it. And thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Did I make it?
I think you did. It got hidden. Yeah, you did. With some time left over.
Laramie, okay, I'll fill it up with that.
Is there any other public comment on this agenda item? All righty. Thank you both. We will next move on to our third work session, and that is the Downtown Development Plan. And this will be held joint with the Planning Commission. So I invite commissioners to join us up here. And we will take a few minutes to reposition. And this is open, so you can either right. The commissioners have joined us, and so we will begin our work session, Downtown Development Plan.
Mayor, Council, Planning Commission, isn't this a good time? Look at all of you up there. We really wanted to take an opportunity to bring both the City Council and Planning Commission members together, one, to just present one time to both of you as a group, but I think sometimes on these topics, we think it's really valuable for both the council to hear Planning Commission's comments and questions, as well as the Planning Commission to hear council's comments and questions on the same subject that will come before you eventually later down the road when we think about considering plan adoption. And so what I'd like to do is just, tonight we're really going to be focused on the discussion related to the Laramie Downtown Development Plan. And if you didn't know, the DDA, the City of Laramie, and Laramie Main Street are working on this plan jointly because really the last plan was completed in 2011, and it's time for an update. And with that process, we've hired consultants to work on the plan for us. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be really looking at, in this presentation tonight, kind of what have we done so far with the plan? What has our first set of public engagement looked like? What kind of funding opportunities does a plan like this allow a DDA specifically to potentially use, as well as kind of what is going to be our next steps in the process as we move forward into plan development and writing things. And so tonight we have Melissa Ruth. She is with Logan Simpson. Her face may look a little bit familiar. She worked on the Laramie Growth Plan for the City of Laramie, her and her firm, so familiar face there. And then we have online Amanda Kennard. She is with Progressive Urban Management Associates. We never say that, we just call them PUMA. So they both have been really heading this project. They were here during our public engagement sessions that we had a couple weeks ago. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's here in-house. Amanda is online, as you can see her little picture in the corner. And so I'm going to turn it over to them to present, and I will let them kind of handle it from here. I'll be available, they'll be available, and really an opportunity to ask questions, hear where we're at, and kind of lay out some next steps on this process. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Good evening, Melissa.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Planning Commission. Good to be back in Laramie. We have, Amanda and I have a short presentation, short-ish. We'll try to keep it to just short of 45 minutes. I kind of lined this out so you get an idea, but I don't think we need full 10 minutes since Derek kind of gave a really good overview of the project itself. If anyone has questions as we move through specifically the public outreach piece, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer additional questions. And we did do kind of a full questionnaire that we are working on some more summary materials that we'll have. Oh, technology. Great. So as Derek mentioned, we have two firms kind of working on this project. That's my little picture up there, but I've also got a full team behind me on the Logan Simpson side, and then Amanda has a full team on her side. So it's not just the two of us working on the project, bringing expertise from working on the Cheyenne Downtown Plan recently, and then Amanda and the PUMA team work all over the nation on specifically financing districts and special things for DDAs. I'm going to skip this since Derek kind of went through it. This is our schedule. So we're about halfway through the process. We started with foundation earlier this year and then jumped right into visioning and choices, where we were out here for about a week working with business and property owners, doing a Sure Out week, and then also doing some visioning exercises with both business and property owners and the public. We also had an online survey that was out, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And we are transitioning into actually taking the information that we heard and the vision that we heard and turning that into the plan. We'll be working on that over the next couple months, targeting a full draft plan release right around summer, and then going through the adoption process in the fall. When we were out here, we did a visioning exercise with the DDA, and I wanted to highlight this to show some of the similarities between what we heard with the Downtown Development Authority, or DDA board, and then with the public. So we asked the DDA if they could use 3 words to describe their vision for the future of downtown, what they would use, and the top 3 were vibrant, growth, and bustling. With the greatest strengths for the DDA being kind of walkability, the historic character, and a pretty diverse mix of land uses, but some opportunities for growth for some expanded business hours, rehabbing some of the buildings that are in need of repair, focusing on some sort of visitor lodging. What that kind of looked like was a little up in the air. And then creating a really cohesive and unified vision across all of the downtown partners, including Wyotech, UW, and then the visitors of Laramie. We also asked what success looks like for this plan. It's a question we like to start with to understand, priorities, what the priorities were. We'll start with that one. We gave 6 options, looking for folks to kind of give us an idea for what they wanted us to focus on, both in the plan, as well as what the focus was for the DDA board moving forward. And local businesses topped that priority list, closely followed by historic character, and then arts and music scene. And the conversations around those 3 were really focusing on that a lot of things kind of touch all 3 of them, but the priority was really to continue to provide resources for supporting local businesses, understanding what those needs and opportunities are, and what enhancements the DDA can continue to provide. For success measures, big focus on a clear and actionable vision for the downtown future. So not just creating a vision for the future, but, one that is actionable and meaningful, and that the plan itself will spark some form of economic growth and reinvestment in downtown. Those could be small reinvestments, but kind of, again, committing to not just planning for planning's sake, but planning for future action. And that includes a clear path forward for funding plan initiatives, which is what Amanda will talk about in a minute here. So what did we hear while we were out here a couple weeks ago? To get the word out, we sent out mailers to the physical address and registered property owners within the downtown district. Staff also sent emails to all businesses and property owners within the downtown district. We also had about 150 table toppers that we put in restaurant locations or locations that had seating, and then posters in most local businesses as well that had some form of a bulletin board. We were also in the Forge Laramie downtown space in the LMSA office with downtown-focused events and outreach from March 12th through the 31st. And then there is a dedicated project website on the Laramie website that's linked directly through planning. And that is still up. So all of this information will kind of go up there, as well as we kind of summarize the outreach in a slightly more formal manner. We did 9 community interviews, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they were 45 minutes each, so we had really in-depth conversations with some business and property owners, some local residents, understanding what the opportunities were for in their opinion, moving forward. We also had over 30 business and property owners at our 2 work sessions. We held an evening one and a morning one to capture some different business types. We also had an additional 20 plus folks at 2 different visioning workshops, which were a little different, focusing a little bit more on kind of the vision for the future of downtown and working on some maps, whereas the business and property owner sessions were a little more targeted on kind of plan initiatives and how to fund those. We had over 40 folks come through the Interactive Museum at the Forge Exchange, and that's that picture that's up there. So we had some interactive exhibits for people to provide input on. And then we had just shy of 250 questionnaire participants that provided input in that month-long time frame on that. Oh, too far. So what did we hear was going well overall throughout all of that outreach? Again, variety of businesses was listed as a plus in the downtown. And I think just about every different opportunity we had for outreach, people mentioned how much they loved the murals and the public art. I don't think a single person didn't mention it. We did hear that there was not also a lot of storefront vacancies, so most of the ground floor storefronts were being utilized, and that there are certain events that bring in a lot more business, specifically for downtown businesses. And again, historic character and buildings were listed as one of folks' kind of things that they really enjoyed about downtown Laramie. Okay. So throughout, I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing a slide. Throughout the outreach that we did in person, we heard kind of a few key themes. The first one is parking. But I will say that the conversation around parking, you laugh, the conversation around parking was very nuanced. We weren't able to really identify from all the conversations one specific issue with parking. It was kind of a full gamut of parking not being quite in the right places, not having quite the right type of parking, comments about parking enforcement, and then parking options overall. So it was kind of the full options of everything about parking, which is a good thing because it means that your downtown's being utilized, people want to come downtown, but maybe some enhancements could be made for how you manage parking in downtown. Supporting beautification, specifically around some of the maintenance and cleanup, especially following some of the Friday night activities, and then some comments for a desire for some more public restrooms, which was something that surprised us a little bit, but that need in the downtown area. Enhancing the downtown feel, so focusing on, again, enhancing public art, greenery, pocket parks, increasing some of the street furniture and sitting options, especially outside businesses. And then embracing heritage, and this was another conversation that really spanned a lot of different thoughts. So it went from everything from enhancing wayfinding and using placards to capitalize on some of the history of buildings. There were a couple different options for what that looks like, but a lot of ideas on how to continue to support the historic character of downtown and educate visitors on what has happened in Laramie. Supporting pedestrian enhancements and walkability was another key topic. A lot of this conversation focused around activating alleyways, increasing lighting for safety, and then adding some bike lanes. Oh, sorry. It's okay. It's a Tuesday. Also coordination of events, so there were some comments that there could be some better conversations about how events are marketed and making sure that all business owners are kind of aware of upcoming opportunities to support connection between businesses and events. Traffic calming and solution kind of tied in with parking and pedestrian a little bit, but stood out as a lack of, or a need for some better signage, dedicated loading and unloading zones, and then slowing traffic and traffic enforcement. So again, a little tie-in, but slightly different. And last but not least, addressing vacant and underutilized buildings. So this was both residential and commercial, but the conversation kind of focusing on how can we support some additional upper story housing? What does that look like? How do we enhance existing commercial buildings so that maybe it's easier to get tenants? And what does that kind of look like as far as street frontage and redevelopment opportunities? Jumping to the questionnaire, you'll see some of the same responses, but we dove a little deeper with the questionnaire. Again, we got 249 responses, with 187 of those going all the way through. So we had an optional demographics section at the end, where we like to ask questions about kind of who we're hearing from and understand who we're not hearing from as well. We had quite a few folks that did drop off before that section, but they made it all the way through the rest of the pieces, so I just wanted to note that. Again, top opportunities that we heard: enhancing streetscapes, attracting more different restaurants and bars, and then preserving historic character. So some of the same kind of themes that we heard from the in-person outreach, which is really unique and also interesting to see that we're hearing the same things across all of our different engagement opportunities, so showing some really strong priorities and preferences. Top challenges that we heard, rising rents in businesses. 42% of respondents said that this was a challenge. The variety of shops and products, so that there's a good mix of them, but they aren't quite open at the right hours, or that businesses maybe aren't quite in the right locations for some of the things that folks are looking for, and parking. When we looked specifically and asked more questions about streetscapes, a lot of the comments focused on enhancing landscapes and greenery, so getting more at that pocket park and green space downtown, but also a lot of comments on outdoor seating options, so providing more opportunities for folks to kind of hang out downtown outside in the times where we have some nice weather outside. Public spaces, public art and gathering places, again, a lot of desire to focus and enhance the alleyways and make those nice kind of active places for folks. And pocket parks were listed heavily as well as a desire and a focus. Looking specifically at the ideal mix of use, yes?
I have a question from Councillor O'Doherty.
Just to refresh, the questionnaire is anybody that, this isn't just the businesses and the property owners, this is anybody using downtown, right? That's who this is trying to capture?
Mayor, through you, yes. We had it open to all, anyone who wanted to provide input. I do have a slide at the end of kind of who we heard from and how that feedback plays in.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, we're going to get it figured out by the end of this.
Every time I move the dialogue box, it makes me re-click on it, so I apologize for that.
This is good information for future. The last slide on the questionnaire is we also asked folks on what 3 words they would use to describe the vision for the future. And vibrant was by far the biggest word used. We also heard welcoming, diverse, friendly, accessible, parking, community, clean. So a lot of the same themes across a lot of the options, or a lot of the different outreach opportunities. So I know I went through those fairly quick, but any questions on kind of what we heard and some of those common themes across the different outreach opportunities?
Councilors, commissioners, questions and or comments? Commissioner Moody.
You mentioned up front university connection. Are you going to talk about that a little bit later? Or, I mean, could you elaborate on what that means?
Mayor, through you, yes. So that conversation was with the DDA board, and one of the opportunities that was highlighted was kind of working with the university as a big part of the city and a big kind of user of downtown, what those opportunities are to either enhance connections to the university, whether that's like pedestrian and walking enhancements, and what sort of additional partnerships there are between the city, the DDA, the Main Street, and the university to enhance kind of use of downtown. It sounded like there was a little bit of conversation of how that relationship has evolved over time, and what, with the university potentially holding more events at the university rather than downtown, and what that looks like in the future. So kind of a nebulous conversation, but something we're kind of keeping in mind moving forward.
Yeah, that's great, because I think there's an opportunity with a new president and a new city manager to improve the connection, however you want to define that, between UW and downtown. And, you know, whether there's a small office space in downtown that could be a UW informational thing, so when people come to visit in the summer, there'd be something UW saying, hey, we got a campus over here, and here's our programs, and if you're from New Jersey and you got a kid in 11th grade and you're a tourist, you see, oh, you know, maybe we should visit the campus. And there is a UW thing in the downtown that says that the community and UW are talking to one another and are trying to, you know, play off each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And that idea did come up, so I'm glad you mentioned it and highlighted it.
Commissioner Matamore.
We talked about this at the depot, mentioned it. Has anybody talked to the DDA about communicating with UW for routing a regular bus schedule from the campus to downtown? Just a short turnaround as part of their regular route that they run.
Yeah, it was identified as a potential action, but we're still kind of in the early phases of prioritizing all of the things that we heard and what the DDA board kind of wants to move forward with as priority action items. But that one did get brought up, and it has been noted.
Thank you.
Councillor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. My question might stem similar to Commissioner Matamore's. Did you hear much about public transit? You know, parking doesn't surprise me. I think that's been a beast since automobiles were created in our community, and we'll always be trying to fix it. But did you notice, is that reflected anywhere in here, the need or advocacy for kind of public transit, or was it phrased in that way for folks?
We heard a little bit about it, specifically with more tied to that university connection, but we also heard about just general connections to downtown. And I think the conversation expanded beyond public transit to looking at kind of those last mile solutions, walking and biking, and what that looks like for folks as well too. So we didn't have specific conversations on transit, but I do believe we asked a question in the questionnaire about it, so I can go back and take a look at that too.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. It's looking on Commissioner Matamore's request, the Laramie link, which basically runs from the Spanish Walk Apartments through the university to downtown, which is on First Street. It runs every 20 minutes, Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So, thank you.
Commissioner Matamore.
The only suggestion I had is it should be extended well into the evenings, and to get the university students down there for later night activities. Also, it'll alleviate drunk driving.
Yep.
Director.
Mayor, to Councilmember Freed's question too, we definitely heard a lot about the Reconnecting Communities project that we just recently completed. And I think I would say that there was a lot of tie-in to that. People just reiterating, yes, the reconnecting kind of answered a lot of my connections to downtown, especially from more west direction. So I think that was another kind of piece of that puzzle that we heard, even though it wasn't directly related to public transit always. It was related to that plan though, for sure. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, great clarification, Derek.
Okay, Melissa.
I just wanted to highlight this because I found it really interesting. We do a lot of plans across kind of Wyoming, Colorado, the West. And one thing that I found really interesting was who we heard from and how we heard from folks with this survey. So social media, 47% of our responses we got from social media. That shows a really strong kind of active social media presence, and I'm sure that's not a surprise to folks, but that is something that we found really interesting. And then the other write-in was 18% of that was direct emails. So we got a lot of responses from folks who were signed up directly for emails or saw the City of Laramie's social media posts, things like that. A lot of it came also from the Main Street Alliance. So I just wanted to point that out. I found it really interesting. And I was also looking back through the questionnaire data, and we saw a significant number of responses compared to what we typically see from younger, under 30 residents. So that was also encouraging to see folks kind of investing in the future of downtown. We don't typically see that. And a lot of folks that do come downtown 5 or more days a week. So these weren't folks that are just kind of casually passing by. These are folks that are active in downtown multiple days a week. So I just wanted to point that out. Something just that we found kind of interesting and fun for Laramie. I'm going to hand it over to Amanda online to talk through the financing and how we get some of the kind of priorities done, what the options are.
Amanda, we can't hear you right now. We still cannot hear you. Nope.
Try again, Amanda.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for bearing with me. So much technology fun. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Mayor, Council, and Planning Commission for having us this evening. So now that we've covered what we're hearing from the community, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and discuss ways Laramie could fund and deliver these downtown priorities over time. So I'll start out with a high-level primer on the tools that typically support plan implementation, and then we'll talk more in depth about what's most relevant for Laramie. Next. Oh, perfect. Okay. Nope, sorry. There we go. So at the larger scale, grants, local, state, federal grants can be great one-off or project-specific investments. They're often not usually reliable for ongoing capacity year over year. So kind of starting with that scale and then starting to move down into more local and hyper-local mechanisms here. The city of Laramie will have a major role in implementing the downtown plan and will continue to be a core funding and delivery partner for the initiatives this plan will recommend. I also want to acknowledge the Laramie Main Street Alliance here as a key implementation partner that already delivers programs and activities that shape the downtown experience day to day. And then where we'll dig a little bit deeper today is the potential role of the Laramie DDA. So what its tools could mean for creating more dedicated downtown specific capacity over time. So as I'm sure you all know, there is currently a DDA in Laramie, but it's not currently leveraging any dedicated funding. So tonight we'll explore the types of projects and programs a DDA can fund and the types of financing tools a DDA can utilize per Wyoming state statute. I do want to just point out we're not making any recommendations at this point in the process, but rather trying to take a temperature check on whether or not there's interest in exploring a DDA funding mechanism through further outreach and analysis that would happen later on in this process. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thanks. So the LMSA is already delivering a lot of the day-to-day downtown programming. As you can see on this slide here, they provide programs and services, things like facade grants, technical assistance to businesses, marketing support, really a diverse range of programming. They're also leading or supporting visible downtown activation efforts and events. So things like Brewfest, the Farmers Market. They also do public art, holiday lighting, and other investments in the downtown experience. Next slide, please. So again, what we want to dig a little bit deeper into today is the potential role of the Laramie DDA in the implementation of this plan. So a DDA is the city's downtown-focused implementation partner. It's a quasi-public entity enabled by Wyoming statute to strengthen downtown vitality. One important distinction I always like to flag when talking about DDAs is that they're one of two tools that are allowed to use tax increment financing under state statute, the other being urban renewal, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. There are some key distinctions between urban renewal and DDAs, one being that DDAs do not have the power of eminent domain, so they cannot take private property. There are also some differences in how TIF can be utilized between these two types of entities as well, which we can get into a little bit deeper later on in the presentation, to the extent you all want to do that. Next slide, please. DDAs are governed by a board of 5 to 11 members appointed by City Council. Laramie currently has a 7-member board. The intent for the board is to be locally connected to the area they serve. So people who live in, own property in, or are directly invested in the district, really to ensure that decisions stay grounded in real downtown conditions over time. Next slide. Perfect. And then just a little bit more about the Laramie Main Street Alliance, a nonprofit organization founded in 2005, centered on preserving historic downtown while strengthening economic and social vitality. We already talked about some of the programs and services they provide, so I think we can keep moving here. So what does a DDA do? The DDA's role is to implement the plan of development, so turning priorities into a funded work program and a clear sequence of action. So this process that we're currently working on for downtown Laramie is both a vision plan for downtown to guide its future and an update to the DDA's plan of development, which serves as a strategic organizational roadmap for the DDA organization itself. So practically, DDAs tend to work across a mix of different types of projects and services, so they can get engaged in business support and economic development, public improvements, redevelopment support. They're really flexible in nature, and one of the next slides here will provide some examples of the types of programs and services that DDAs provide in other communities. Perfect, thank you. So this slide here I think is really helpful in illustrating the flexibility of DDAs as a tool. So this slide here is a summary of benchmark DDAs from Colorado. It's a comparison of projects and initiatives funded by 9 Colorado DDAs, totaling 169 projects, or about 18 to 19 projects per DDA. We find that Colorado is a helpful reference point because DDAs are a common downtown revitalization tool statewide. There are more than 20 DDAs across Colorado communities, so it just gives us a deeper set of real-world examples than we have in Wyoming. So a key takeaway here is that DDAs often put dollars into physical improvements, so things like connectivity projects related to bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure, intersection enhancements, streetscape and beautification, wayfinding, gateways, public art. A lot of physical improvements can be funded by DDAs. They also frequently get involved in development, reuse, and activation. So this can include initiatives like helping address storefront vacancies, supporting redevelopment opportunities, and participating in public-private partnerships that can help move building reinvestment forward. So that can happen both inside the building and in the public realm around it, and that's one of the things that makes DDAs a really unique tool for downtown revitalization. But DDAs also don't just fund capital work. So many DDAs can help fund programs and services that support downtown vitality, things like marketing, events, support for businesses, and things of that nature as well. So as you can see here, DDAs fund many of the initiatives that are emerging as priorities in Laramie, including parking management, support for local businesses, beautification and streetscape enhancements, historic preservation, and public art as well. So how are DDAs funded? They're able to leverage a few different types of mechanisms here. So as I mentioned earlier, we're not making a recommendation to pursue any of these options at this point in the process, but rather just trying to educate the community on options and take a temperature on support before conducting further exploration and analysis. So one of the key tools a DDA can utilize is tax increment financing. financing. So in Wyoming, the TIF approach here is performance-based. It captures growth in both property and sales above the base in the city's portion of property tax and or all or a portion of municipal sales tax within the DDA, and then that money is reinvested back into the DDA's boundaries. So TIF is notably not an increase in taxes, but rather the capture of increasing property and sales tax over time. TIF is activated through the DDA's plan of development. The way it would work is that after the plan of development is approved, and if this recommendation is included, the city would continue receiving the base year amount, and then only the growth above that base year can be directed into a dedicated downtown special fund for up to 25 years. Next slide, please. So DDAs are also able to have a mill levy. So mill levy is a direct and predictable funding tool. DDAs in Wyoming are able to levy up to 30 mills on non-residential property in the district. So residential only property is excluded from a potential assessment. It's usually the best fit for ongoing capacity and visible delivery of programs and services, things like operations, enhanced maintenance, programs, and business support. Mill levies are actually the most common funding mechanism used by DDAs in Wyoming. So active DDAs in Casper and Cheyenne both utilize a mill levy to fund downtown initiatives. In Casper, the DDA is currently levying 16 mills, and in Cheyenne, their DDA is levying 20 mills. So you don't have to go after the full 30 mil amount. That's just the cap. DDAs are also able to bond for larger scale projects and improvements. Next slide, please. So how do these funding tools get authorized? To pursue a mill levy, the DDA would need to go through two steps. First, city council approval, and then a vote of district property owners. So the mill levy would then be billed annually and expires after 4 years unless renewed in the same way. So it's not a perpetual funding mechanism. It does need to be renewed every 4 years, but it is relatively easy to collect as that additional property tax. If there is interest in exploring a mill levy further here in Laramie, there would need to be additional process to clarify what the funds would be used for and what mill levy rate would be palatable for business and property owners without being burdensome. We've heard a lot about how valuable the small business community is in Laramie, so we would want to make sure that if we were going to explore the mill levy option, it was tolerable for your downtown business owners. The TIF is activated through the plan of development process, which I mentioned earlier. If that moves forward, base taxes continue as usual, and then that growth above the base can be directed into a downtown special fund for up to 25 years. Next slide, please. And I think this is our last one here. Perfect. So this final slide summarizes the three options that could be pursued through the DDA. So mill levy, tax increment financing, and then we do want to present the third option here, which is to do nothing. And that is a perfectly acceptable option that could come out of this process. There are pros, cons, and trade-offs associated with each option. So the mill levy, it's a direct and predictable funding source. TIF is performance-based and depends on growth in property and sales over time. So there are both some advantages to that and then also some potential challenges. And then doing nothing or continuing as is avoids added cost, but has the potential to limit dedicated capacity for downtown initiatives beyond what is already being offered. So just a few trade-offs associated with each of these potential funding mechanisms. The mill levy is a new assessment, and it does occur on a renewal cycle, but in exchange you get a stable downtown funding source and hyper-local accountability over how those funds are used. The trade-offs associated with TIF are that it doesn't raise raise anyone's taxes. It can run for 25 years, so it is a longer term funding mechanisms. But the increment depends on growth and it is constrained, so it's not guaranteed revenue, depending on how conditions evolve in downtown. And then if we choose no change, the risk is that downtown work keeps competing annually for limited city and other resources, just making it a little harder to sequence and sustain plan implementation over time. Something I do want to note on this slide is that we shared this information with downtown business and property owners during the Charrette Week that Melissa had mentioned. There was an openness to exploring these options further, both the mill levy and the tax increment financing, but folks want to get a better understanding for both the capacity of these funding tools in Laramie, so what things could these different mechanisms actually finance, and what the cost would be if we're going to go down the road of exploring a mill levy. So I just want to notate that there is, at least in our initial conversations, an openness to exploring what these things could look like further. So with that, I think we'll pause and see if there are questions, comments, or feedback on any of this. I know that was a lot of information, so.
Commissioner Mattimore?
I had two questions. We discussed this at the depot. I think if you want to use either system for getting funding, downtown is too small. The current idea of downtown is too small. I've always believed it should run from Lewis to the highway, from the tracks to the west side of 3rd Street. And that would give you a much bigger basis to finance anything. The second point is, as a long-term downtown merchant, funding is okay. I think most people would go along with either one of those options, but they're going to want their businessmen. They want to know, what are you going to do with the money? If you're just going to throw the money in a pot and divvy it up, politically. But if you go project by project, you'll get a lot more receptive response to the funding.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councillor O'Doherty.
So the mill levy idea, if someone could remind me, so the city gets 8 mills right now, property tax. And then I can't remember, so I'm trying to put it in perspective. 30 sounds like a big number. Like, that's what schools get, some number like that? Or is the school mill, anyway. But it seems to me the mill levy really doesn't depend on us. It depends on the owners, right? The owners of those properties, whether they're willing to do that. And so that doesn't seem like our decision. So I like not having to make that decision.
Yeah, the mill levy definitely would have to be backed by private sector champions in order for that to be a real possibility here. So I had mentioned that there would likely need to be some additional process, some additional outreach, a deeper dive into the numbers and what this all would mean for businesses and for property owners. So that point is well taken.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. One was that I think the DDA going into this very much recognizes that there needs to be buy-in to whatever project is there before pursuing any of this. And the comment about including more people in the downtown district, I think the property owner has to opt into that. Is that correct, Derek? I remember thinking or considering this, so it has to be their choice to opt in. And then the third thing is more of a question, because our property taxes are so low in Wyoming. I remember hearing conversation about having to stack some of these things to actually bring in generate the money that would take to do some of these projects. Could the mill levy and the TIF be stacked in this case? You wouldn't have to choose one or the other. You could do both. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And a lot of DDAs in Colorado do utilize both mill levy and tax increment finance. So there is precedent for that, at least in your neighboring state.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Freed?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for the information. Just curious, I know this is probably going to be really hard, a hard question in terms of answering it, because, you know, for downtown development authorities across the country, is there one, I'm sure that each community is different, so there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but what have you seen in your work that is like an effective kind of use of finding funding that's been successful, maybe in our region or for communities of our size, if you had any of that info?
Yeah, and Melissa, I would welcome your knowledge on this as well. But what we've seen most commonly, at least in Wyoming, is the use of the mill levy. There are some limitations, and I mentioned this briefly, but there are some limitations about TIF for DDAs in Wyoming. So they are only able to collect increment on the 8 mil property tax, the city's portion of that. So that does create some limitations on what you can generate through tax increment finance in Wyoming. In Colorado, for example, that cap does not exist, and so the revenue generation potential using TIF is a lot larger, and that is a reason we see TIF as the most commonly used financing tool by DDAs in Colorado, and actually less so on the mill levy side. So I'd offer that. Melissa, I don't know, anything you would add from other Western communities you've worked in?
Yeah, I'll start with Wyoming's a little unique. We all know that. Our statutes are a little unique, as Amanda has kind of highlighted. We only have 3, maybe 4, like active DDAs in the state, so it's kind of hard to, and our statutes are a little different than Colorado, as Amanda noted. So I went back and I pulled up the Cheyenne plan. Cheyenne only leverages the mill, and they're at 20, so they're bringing in about $485,000 per year using just the mill. I would say with either of these funding mechanisms, they take a couple of years at least to really start to kind of gain some traction and be used for projects. And some of the projects specifically that we've been looking at are some long-term projects. So there's potential for those to need to be kind of multi-fund stream projects. But the mill levy has been really successful in the state. Cheyenne did leverage TIF at one point, but they, going back and reading what it said, that was pulled, and it was mostly, that was bringing in a lot of funding because of one large business and property, or business in downtown. Once that business left downtown, wasn't generating money, and then the TIF district, I believed, Amanda, they can't overlap a URA TIF district as well, right? So yeah,
that's right. You can't have 2 overlapping TIF districts, but you can have a mill levy and the TIF overlapping. That's just a slight nuance there.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I don't know that I have a great example for you, but it has been done successfully, and DDAs are successfully financed in this state as well as our surrounding state. I think a lot of the downtowns that folks look at that they really love have had a financing mechanism in place for a long time. So Fort Collins is always a community that's kind of listed, and they've had a very active DDA with a very active financing for decades. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, that none of these things are really quick fixes, but they all move us in the right direction as a community and for downtown reinvestment. I hope that's a good enough circuitous answer.
Thank you. Commissioner Moody.
Walk me back. I don't know anything about Laramie's DDA. Do we have one? Is Laramie one of the 3 or 4 that you referred to?
Yes.
And so you said we've had it since 2005? Or that was when DDAs were sort of developed?
Mayor, through you, 2005 is when the Main Street Alliance was created. The DDA was created in 98? I don't have that off the top of my head, but it's been around. The uniqueness with Laramie's DDA right now is that it doesn't have a funding mechanism. So it's existing, but it doesn't have the ability to finance projects. That's kind of why this conversation is coming up, is there's no method by which we can actually implement the plan of development right now, other than through grants or dedicated council funds.
So up to this point, Main Street Alliance has really been doing the heavy lifting of doing downtown improvements. Is that correct? If DDA hasn't had any funding?
Mayor, through you, yes. The LMSA has really been kind of spearheading a lot of the things that are happening downtown. So that's kind of another unique thing about Laramie, is that the Main Street Alliance has really been that kind of big organization, financing organization. Typically you see the Main Street Alliance as more of kind of the events, and then the DDA is doing that heavy lifting for physical investment and things like that.
But hasn't had funding to do it.
Correct.
So it's conceptual heavy lifting, but not actual heavy lifting. Okay, I just want to get this thing straight in my head, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
And if I can add to that a little bit, when we talk about this with LMSA and the DDA, we discuss the idea that oftentimes the DDA, and Derek, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that typically they would be, if they could implement something like a mill, they could do something that is more structural, that is looking at sidewalks, that is looking at like some larger scale things, whereas the LMSA is looking at the vitality of downtown and thinking about historic preservation and celebrating, kind of re-energizing that sort of thing. So it would be more like one person would be working more on the bricks and mortar sort of thing, where the other would be the other side of it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And I will say too, one of the powerful things we see DDAs do in other communities is help to close gaps on financing larger scale, whether it's public realm improvements, or I mentioned that DDAs can get involved in public-private partnerships. And so we see DDAs helping to close financing gaps, even when they aren't able to 100% cover the cost of some of those larger scale physical investments. So we've seen that happen really successfully in other communities.
Further questions and or comments? Oh, Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarity, I think for all of us, the first step in order for us to have a mill levy is to have the city council approve it, because the funding will come from our mills, our 8 mills. The second is the district. I think the downtown district has to approve the mills and their participation in it. And my understanding, it's been attempted, but it's failed several times. Is that correct?
So the process is correct, as we've described, and so it has been attempted one time, but it did not pass in the downtown district about 20 years ago. So, Mayor, if you don't mind, I think kind of to circle back to kind of one of the broader questions too is, when we think about this funding and what the DDA looks like, I mean, that's really the purpose of this plan too, is to outline those major investments. Where does the downtown want to invest in itself, right? And if they so choose, they potentially have a funding mechanism to do that. And so through this plan, our hope is that they outline those things that they want to see done, and then if they so choose, potentially develop a funding mechanism to maybe help themselves. And so I think, as we go through this process, I think we're going to start to see those projects and those what's important come to the top. And granted, not everything will probably get done right away, but it starts to outline our ability to know where potentially from I think Madam Moore mentioned the business sense, right? Like, where does the money go? And if you look back at the failure of the last time this was attempted, there really wasn't that available for the downtown business owners to know where the money was going. And I think that, when I read back and try to interpret the documents, right, my best I can, that's what I saw, right, is that it was not quite clear where that money was going to go. And I think that that's our real hope in developing a plan like this, so that we know what projects might be able to come together with, whether it's funding or going after any of these other options, depending upon what we hear from the downtown. So,
I'm just curious if you know what percentage of businesses downtown lease their property versus own their property.
I don't think I have that off the top of my head.
I'm just thinking, a concern was that the rents are going up. So then if we levy the owners, then I would assume the rents would continue to go up. So I think it might be interesting at some point to get a handle on ownership and leasing and what percentage. It kind of gives us an idea about the power of those businesses to implement these kind of decisions.
Yeah, that's great feedback, and definitely would be part of the consideration if we do recommend going down the road of exploring a mill levy further.
And I do think that it's hard to vote in favor of something if you don't have a vision for what that's going to become. If you can give people a vision, I think they're more likely to get on board. So, any further questions and/or comments? All right, seeing none, we will go to public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes, Mr. Glass. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, councilors, members of the commission. My name is Brett Glass. I'm the owner of 2 downtown businesses and co-owner of the tallest building in downtown. And greeting this plan with a little bit, with interest and a little bit of apprehension. This is the first new plan in 15 years, and I'm not sure how long it's supposed to last. But in general, long-term plans, making any kind of a long-term plan is a difficult thing to do, because you have to be agile to have a downtown business or to do anything downtown. You have to respond to changes in the market quickly, in weeks, not years, and certainly not multiple years. And for the city to impose too rigid a plan or too rigid a regime on downtown can truly harm it instead of helping it. And so far what we've seen with the plan is that displays downtown at the Forge pop-up focus too much on non-essentials and not on the essential things you need to work downtown. They talk about public art and other niceties. Unfortunately, they don't focus on what businesses really need, and a lot of that is freedom from plans that are too prescriptive and too much burdensome regulation and bureaucracy. One thing that's especially worrisome, and this came out in some of the sessions that were conducted already, is a possibility of taxation on downtown. It's hard enough as it is, and has already been mentioned, rents are going up because insurance is going through the roof. You almost can't insure a downtown building. There are very few choices. And the taxation mechanism, which you do have is not fair. If you have a mixed-use building especially, then the tax impacts you, whereas a residential building that's all residential right next door to it gets a tax break, and that's not fair. As the co-owner of a mixed-use building, it would especially concern me that my neighbors weren't paying in to whatever was done. Myself, I would only really willing to be willing to be taxed for one thing, and that is a parking structure, because parking is the main issue downtown, and this is the one thing that we most desperately need. Also, during the sessions, I was concerned that again, there was a bias toward what particular groups and organizations wanted. LMSA in particular has a particular of favoring things with its own pet interests and trying to
Point of
impose
order.
that on.
Sorry, I guess we're not in a regular meeting, but if we could abstain from calling out individual.
They were mentioned by name before, so I was hoping that was okay.
Please, we've asked you before not to do that.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a concern. But in any case, hello? Please pause the clock. But in any case, if you do go ahead with making a plan, please make it general. Don't put too many restrictions on it. Make it adaptable. Make sure you actually listen to the residents and businesses there. Try to reduce regulation rather than imposing more. And please don't tax us except for absolutely essential infrastructure such as parking.
Thank you.
Please let downtown develop itself.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
help it to do
Glass.
that. Thank you.
You very much. Is there any further public comment? Nancy Sendelar.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you for letting me bend your ears twice in one night. You've been talking about money and really dense, really detailed stuff, and I've got a way that I think will help the downtown businesses. It won't cost Laramie any money to do it. And what it is you've been sitting here for how many years, councilors, people, watching that intersection right out there. It's not very busy. There's a sign on it that says bike route to UW campus. There's no bike lane. If we get rid of that left turn lane for the people on Ivinson, not 4th Street, just the people on Ivinson.
Point of order.
This is to help the downtown businesses. Get more people downtown without their cars.
Okay. It seems a little off topic, Nancy,
Well, from what I saw in the agenda, this was, I wasn't understanding
go
that
ahead.
it was all money. And I'm just trying to get ideas into the head that if we can make it the connection between the university and downtown easier, we'll get more business downtown without the cars. I went to college, returned to college. The mayor knows very well. She was my instructor. I would get on my bike, I would ride downtown, I would get lunch, I would do a little bit of shopping, I would head back to class. I had an hour and 20 minutes. And everybody else had to walk up to the Union, get in their car, drive downtown, find a parking place. Now it's time to reverse it because they got to go back up to the Union and find another parking place. But I got to go shopping. I got to eat lunch downtown every day because I could zip down Ivinson and go back. And if we make that easier for other people, I think we could help the businesses downtown. And paint is paint. It's going to be the same price whether we paint a left turn lane or if we paint a bike lane. And right now, there's nothing between 3rd and 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
1 minute to go.
Yeah.
I made up for the last one.
All righty. Any further public comment? Councilors, commissioners, any final comments? All right. Director Tini, final comment?
If I may.
Of course.
All right. No, first off, thanks for tonight. Just remember, we're not done with this process. You know, as you go back and think about this all night long, which I know you will, feel free to email us if you have ideas, if you have thoughts. You all know people that do business in the downtown, shop in the downtown, use the downtown. If they have questions or comments that they want to try to get into this plan, have them get in touch with me. As Melissa mentioned earlier in the process, we're still open to doing one-on-one interviews with anyone who wants to do those with us. All you got to do is reach out to the office. We'll set up a time just kind of based on whatever our schedules are, so that we can get those incorporated into the plan. So, we're still in that process of engaging with the public. So if you know people that want to get their voice heard, have them get in touch with us. planning@cityoflaramie.org will get them there, and we'll get them in touch with the right people, with our consultants or with staff. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. And Melissa and Amanda, thank you very much for your presentation. Commissioners, thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor to have you tonight. All right. We have business to conclude, so if you would like to exit stage left before we do that. Thank you so much for coming. All right, councilors. Any updates? Can we start with Councilor Newman? No updates.
Yeah, I don't think I have any.
Councilor Freed.
I'll be brief, Mayor. Last Wednesday, Parks, Streets, and Rec Board met. We decided at our next meeting places and some tours of some parks in the summer. And we also heard a really awesome presentation about the capital projects of the Parks, Streets, and Rec, including a new bike park that will start going underway, and I think consulting with some local trail experts to make sure that there's some really safe and fun features. And then Traffic Safety Commission met last Thursday. And we had a really good conversation working with the university to talk about Bradley Street and potential removal of stop signs to ease their traffic congestions. And then the Railroad Depot Board met on Thursday, and it was really fun. They're talking about some of the funding and Big Boy coming back next Friday, I believe. So the Big Boy train will come back through Laramie next Friday. So something to take the folks and family to. And then the last thing I have was I got to attend the Soup Kitchen fundraiser for the first time. So thank you, Mayor. And that was an incredible experience and really cool to see members of our community supporting an awesome program. So those are my updates.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. So DDA has been working on what you all have just had the pleasure of going over. Main Street had that same presentation, so that was a big part of the Main Street meeting. Pilot Hill is going to host a cleanup day on the 24th, whatever day the Saturday is, that's the 20-somethingth. They'll be hosting a community cleanup day for our community cleanup efforts that the city is putting on. They also are narrowing down names for all of the trails, so those should be unveiled soon, which has been fun to kind of be a part of. And then city manager, the mayor, and I met with folks at UW, our last meeting with President Seidel before the transition to the new president occurs, and that was really beneficial. Todd was great, city manager was great about telling them to really prep themselves for what's to come on Ivinson. So I think they're in it and going to be part of those conversations to make that as easy as possible, even though it's going to be not easy. So
thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you guys for coming to the Soup Kitchen, dueling pianos the other night. It meant a lot to Davina, so thank you very much. I guess we donate money, so we need to get that collected, don't we? You get set $1,000 for the council, so we have to get that.
Oh yeah.
So we got to get that all divvied up.
Yeah.
Did that again, so thank you.
We did that again.
So
anyway.
So we'll figure that out.
1,000 for 9
people.
We'll figure that out.
Also,
Got an email.
last night, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and we get to vote on what they looked at last night on a de-annexation of 80 acres on the north end of 30th Street. So that was quite a lengthy conversation last night with the Planning Commission. So we get to see it next week. And that was pretty much the whole meeting. They postponed the next section because not all parties were involved. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some preliminary reports on the preparation for the celebration for the year, for the celebration of the 250th year celebration. I think I've already reported that we have a semi-truck full of food coming to Interfaith, which will be distributed to the soup kitchen and other places here in town, a complete semi-load. And then also I have a group that I've talked to this past week that wants to perform patriotic songs during the celebration, and they're looking for maybe the band shell or maybe the downtown during Jubilee days or such to sing patriotic songs. So I need to find somebody that will give me ideas on where to do that and how to do that.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a Human Rights and Relations Commission meeting tomorrow, unfortunately, also at the same time as our work session. So I'll probably try and make the first 20 minutes or so. But that's at the Laramie Boomerang Conference Room. Thanks.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I feel like a slacker. The Environmental Advisory Commission didn't meet, but they're part of the incentive for doing the waste characterization study, and so the city's asking for volunteers, and I signed up to sort through garbage. April 21st through Friday the 24th, and they're asking volunteers to sign up for 4 to 8 hour blocks. Won't that be fun? I have to get pictures.
I think you'll enjoy it, going through it. You're so curious. All right. Let's see, on the 8th, I had Town and Gown. We are continuing to move forward with the rental app, and that is being sponsored through WyoTech at this point in time. Also, we discussed reaching out for community members to be a part of Town and Gown, that it's really city, county, and higher ed, and there's no community members. So that's our next step right now, is to add that. Then that afternoon, I had Civil Service Commission. On the 9th, we had the quarterly meeting with the president, and that went really well, and it was kind of a nice closure and summary, and hats off to Todd for saying it's going to be tough, that Ivinson, getting them ready. On the 9th that evening, I went to the Heirloom Business After Hours, and that was really good. A lot of people were there, very interesting, and I got to meet a lot of the engineers that are working there right now. Then we had the Soup Kitchen fundraiser, and we did pledge City Council $1,000. Anyway, I'll send out an email so that you all can see what you might want to do. The Vice Mayor and I on Sunday met with a group of UW grads who have formed a group to learn about civic engagement. And it was really a most interesting group of young people in their late 20s, probably, who are interested in civic engagement, how you do things, how everything works. And I imagine that you all will be asked at some point to come in for 1 hour on a Sunday afternoon. On Monday, we had the WAM planning meeting, and we looked at the schedule, and it looks very interesting. I did put a plug in for housing, and that was picked up positively. And so we might have something where we feature both Laramie and Sheridan, since there's commonality in our two groups. I really wanted to get that on there. And we looked at some of the events. I would remind you that we are still needing some sponsorship, so if you all have forgotten about that, if you could put it back in your frontal lobe, that would be good, and let's start working on it, myself included. And then next week, I have the Region 1 WAM meeting, and I'll be meeting with Ryan O'Neill in Student Services at Wyotech. And that's...
Can I have one thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I was recruited by LCBA to their membership drive, renewal drive, and it's a big deal, big telethon type deal next week, and I was recruited to be a captain on there. And so now I attended this powwow the other day, which was pretty fun. Guy has a zoot suit on, real good. And he does it all across America. And so it's basically to call people that are current members, to get them to renew, and then maybe upgrade, okay? And then also maybe try to recruit new members. So then they assigned me that I need to get 5 more people to do this with me. And so if anybody would like to have fun for 3 hours with me next, let me see. I haven't focused on this until today when I found out I have to have everything in on Thursday. And I'm like, what? On the 21st, Tuesday morning at 8:15 at the Hilton for 3 hours, we're going to have a telethon. So if anybody would like to, they give you the list and all that kind of stuff that we just call people, and it tells you what levels that they're at and what they can get if they upgrade and things like that. So I volunteered to do it because I'm a big believer in the LCBA. So I'm going to upgrade myself based on what I saw. So if anybody would like to join me, it'd be fun.
Can you say the times again, sorry?
For 3 hours.
Oh, dang it. Yeah, can you do a partial?
It's in the morning,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you can do, whatever. That's what our session that I get to do.
Thank you. I got recruited by Shelley.
You understand?
I understand. So, okay. So, counselors, if we can do a review of the agenda, and then we will be finished.
Mayor, I do have 2 requested changes to the agenda when you're ready for that.
You what?
I have 2 requests for changes to the agenda when you're ready for that.
Well, would you like to put that in now, so as we're reviewing?
Absolutely. So on the consent agenda, we received a Delancey Enterprise LLC request for a Laramie County retail liquor license to be able to pull an alcohol catering permit for a one-day event at the Marion Rochelle Gateway Center on May 5th. So we'd like to put that on consent.
Okay.
And then I was informed that 11A is being worked on a little bit more in detail, so they need a little more time to complete that, so they want to remove that one from the agenda.
Okay, so we're removing 11A, and, all right. And is that it?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. So with those changes in mind, is there any comment on the consent agenda? It's rather simple this time.
It's pretty simple.
And any comment on the regular? All righty.
And tomorrow night's open house, correct?
Tomorrow night is here.
No, it's an MOC.
Oh, it's in the MOC?
It is here.
It is here.
Oh,
Our invite says MOC.
Yeah.
It also says
It says MOC.
tentative, though.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, there are 2 that are out, I think. One's a 10 and one's a 9.
Oh, I apologize for the confusion for that, but it should be here. We had talked about maybe having it at the MOC, but we weren't able to get all of the arrangements done for that, so I apologize for that. confusion there.
And the focus of tomorrow night is the specific purpose excise tax, to talk about that and to help inform the public about that. Counselor?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't know if it's worth doing a social media post or news blast about that. I don't know if we're the only ones who saw that tentative calendar invite for the MOC, but I don't know if any members of the public would have thought that, who would have attended. So I don't know if it's worth putting something out.
The newspaper announcement did say here, and everything else that we've put out says here. It was just that calendar invite that went to management team, Amy, Terrell, and you all. So no one else has seen that.
Awesome. Thanks, City Clerk.
Appreciate you bringing that up, though. With my absence last week, we just didn't have the ability to get it all arranged to have it out at the MOC.
All right. Counselors, thank you. Appreciate all your good questions and comments tonight. We are adjourned.